The New Norm is brought to you by Winning at Home. I'm Steve Norman. Welcome to The New Norm. Over the last month, I've been reading the book of Ezekiel, and there's a lot of really heavy stuff in there. In fact, if there's one recurring line in the book of Ezekiel, it's, "And then they will know that I am the Lord." And it's as if God says to the people of Israel, hey, you disobeyed me, and as a result, I had to discipline you. I sent you into exile in Babylon. And as a result of my correction, you're going to know that I'm the Lord. And all these other tribes that don't yet know me and all these other nations that have disrespected me, I'm going to correct them. I'm going to get their attention in ways that are real and tangible and dramatic, sometimes violent. And when I do that, then they're going to know that I'm the Lord. And you hear it over and over and over again. Then Israel's going to know that I'm the Lord. And then their neighbor Moab is going to know that I'm the Lord. And then Ammon is going to know that I'm the Lord. And then Egypt is going to know that I'm the Lord. And it just keeps going all the way down the list. And as you near the end of the book of Ezekiel, God starts to say, hey, a time is going to come when this exile, when these kind of 70 years of time out that I have given you as a nation, that's going to come to an end. And so I read this just last week in Ezekiel chapter 39, verses 23 to 29. And these are the promises that God gives to the people of Israel who have been suffering in exile. And I don't know about you, but maybe you've been in a season where you feel wildly disoriented. Maybe you feel like you're in a season of exile, maybe in your relationship, maybe you're in your career, maybe you're going through like a dry season in your relationship with God. And it might be that that's just the way of life. It doesn't necessarily have to be anybody's fault. But it could be that, like it was for Israel, it is for us a season of discipline, not a season of punishment, but a season of recalibration, a season of correction. Like when we give our toddlers a timeout, we're not doing it to shame them or push them down or make them feel small. We're giving that to them as a gift so that they can recalibrate. They can think about what they did that was less than wise. They can think about where that choice got them, and they can think about a different way going forward. In fact, we read in the book of Hebrews that says, God only disciplines us out of his love. He doesn't do it out of vindictiveness. He doesn't do it out of anger. He doesn't do it out of insecurity. He does it out of love. Because he wants what is good for us, he gives us the time and the space to think about where things went left. And so these are the promises that God gives to Israel after a season of discipline. Verse 23, and the nations will know that the people of Israel went into exile for their sin because they were unfaithful to me. So I hid my face from them, and I handed them over to their enemies, and they all fell by the sword. And I dealt with them according to their uncleanness and their offenses, and I hid my face from them. That's the hard part of discipline. But then in verse 25, he turns a corner. This is what the sovereign Lord says. I will now restore the fortunes of Jacob. My footnote says, I will now bring Jacob, another name for Israel, I will now bring Jacob back from captivity. And I will have compassion on all the people of Israel, and I will be zealous for my holy name. They will forget their shame and all the unfaithfulness they showed toward me when they lived in safety in their land with no one to make them afraid. When I have brought them back from the nations and have gathered them from the countries of their enemies, I will be proved holy through them in the sight of many nations. Then they will know that I am the Lord their God. For though I sent them into exile among the nations, I will gather them to their own land, not leaving any behind. I will no longer hide my face from them, for I will pour out my spirit on the people of Israel, declares the sovereign Lord. So listen to that. There are 7 promises that God gives to the people of Israel in exile. The first one is, I will restore them. I think that some of us have been in seasons where maybe we made a mistake, maybe somebody else made a mistake. It feels like things fell apart and they'll never get back to normal. And on this side of eternity, maybe some of those things won't be fully restored, but God does say at the soul level, I will restore what's been lost. I will restore what's been broken. And I don't know about you, but that's a line that I needed to hear. That God is a God of restoration. Then he says this, I will have compassion on them. I'm going to show you kindness. I'm going to show you love. I'm going to show you mercy. And I also love that God says, I'm going to do this not only out of your consideration for me, but I'm also going to do it for the honor and the integrity of my own name. He goes, I will be zealous for me. And I think part of the reason that Israel's disobedience broke God's heart wasn't just because it led them into a tailspin. It led them into consequences that weren't immediately beneficial for them, but it also dishonored and discredited the name of God. And God says, I'm going to move in such a way that doesn't just restore you to your land. It doesn't just show compassion on you, but also allows my reputation to be honored and to be reinforced. And like, man, when I look at where our nation is, and I look at how the people who claim to be the people of God have postured themselves in such a way that has harmed others, it hasn't done good for the reputation of God. And what I love is God says, I'm going to be zealous for my name. And people are going to know that I am who I say I am, not who others may have led them to believe that I am. He says, I'm going to be zealous for my name. I will be proved holy. When we get later in the book, God says, like, I'm going to help people distinguish the difference between what is holy, what is like God, and what is common, what is not like God. And God is saying, I will be proved holy. In the middle of the challenging season that you are in, when the dust settles and when everything has been restored as it should be, people are going to know that I am not only kind, but that I am perfect, that I'm righteous, that I'm good, and that I'm holy. Then the fifth promise he says is, I'm gonna gather them. Like, there's not a single person is gonna be left behind. Everybody who has strayed from me is gonna get brought back into the fold. And then there's this other great promise. He goes, I will no longer hide my face from them. There was a mystic in medieval times, a guy by the name of St. John of the Cross, and he wrote a book called The Dark Night of the Soul. And he goes, there are times, there are seasons where, for whatever reasons, God is not clear to us. That we don't get to see God's face. We don't get to hear God's voice. We don't get to sense God's presence in a way that we feel like we need to. And there's not always a good reason for why that's the case. But he does say this. He goes, those seasons don't last forever. He's like, and when I bring you back from exile, you're going to see my face. You're going to hear my voice. You're going to sense my presence. If you're not hearing, seeing, feeling those now, know this, that season doesn't last forever. And then the last promise, he says, is one that harkens back to the book of Joel. We also hear that recapped in Peter's speech at Pentecost in Acts chapter 2. He goes, in those last days, I'm going to pour out my spirit on all people. And Ezekiel says it as well. He goes, I'm going to pour out my spirit on the people of Israel. And that spirit is going to give them peace. It's going to give them power. It is going to give them the capacity and the ability to reflect God's image in every way. Pour out my spirit on their relationships. Pour out my spirit on their gifts. Pour out my spirit on their bodies. Pour out my spirit on their worship. That God is good. He's going to unleash a wave of his fullness that will be absolutely undeniable. So if you're going through a hard time, if you're going through a rough patch, if you're going through a dry spell, if you feel like you're in exile, and there have been good chunks of the last decade where I feel like I've been in exile, know that season doesn't last forever, and that God makes these promises in the midst of it. I'm gonna restore you. I'm gonna be compassionate towards you. I'm gonna be zealous for my name. I'm gonna prove myself holy through your life. I'm gonna gather all the stragglers and the runaways and the loners back to myself. I'm gonna reveal my face to you again. And I will pour out my spirit to you. If you're stuck, I want you to hang on to those promises. And if there's a prayer that you need to pray, say, God, will you be real to me in the very same way that you promised Israel that you would be real to them so many years ago through the prophet Ezekiel? The New Norm is produced and distributed by Winning at Home. Winning at Home is a faith-based nonprofit committed to making individuals, couples, families, and businesses stronger through counseling and coaching. For more information, visit winningathome.com. I'm your host, Steve Norman. Thanks for listening.